Hello, and welcome to the Off the Tools podcast with me, Andy Jones, and
Mr. Wayne Bettess. How we doing, ladies and gentlemen?
we still need to buy the soundboard. So we've got a let's say a very, would you say, interesting, popular, triggering, one of the top topics in the game, potentially the most talked about thing in the game. Which is why going self-employed isn't always the upgrade. Controversial statement. And you're going to get guys who are absolutely for being self-employed. And as I was just saying to Wayne prior to this starting the recording, the guys that are pro self-employed tend to really shout about it. The guys who've maybe been self-employed and then gone back employed and know it's better tend not to shout about it. So the purpose of this is to try and give that slightly more neutral, unbiased approach and touch on the numbers a little bit, rather than this getting like this, blindsided a little bit, having the blinkers on, so to speak, of why the people who think it's best are the loudest usually, but in reality it might not be the best for you, or you as an individual, I suppose. And yeah, there's nothing, I think a lot of guys as well, when they've been self-employed and then they go back to employment, they tend not to really speak about it too much, because there's a potential of like failure from a man perspective. But I would sort of argue then there's a different angle of that, of you gave it a go and it's not all it's cracked up to be. And if anything, the reason why this has never been as relevant as it is today is that it's harder now than it's ever been to move into self-employment, because the competition or the bar has been raised so much. All of the lads in Off the Tools, for example, are using software, job management softwares, quoting softwares, things like that. And a lot of the talk on the forums from the self-employed lads, a lot of them aren't using even a job management software. I saw a post the other day, someone asking about where can they get branded service pads from.
Oh God, it's 2026, for Christ's sake. Branded pads.
That's the problem, isn't it? And if you go self-employed and go and go in with that mindset, that old-fashioned mindset of I'm just going to be a good engineer, it just isn't going to work. So what me and Wayne are going to do is just sort of break it down a little bit from a numbers perspective, which maybe not everybody sees it from, and then we'll give a little example, and then we'll break it down a little bit more of the pros and the cons, because there is pros and cons to both. It isn't just about the money, isn't it? Yeah. And it should realistically be, being self-employed gives you access to a larger amount of money, or greater earning potential, or less hours worked. It will not produce both, certainly not if you start today. It will not produce both unless you do it very well.
And everyone that is good at their job, someone says to them, just go self-employed, you'll earn more money, you'll have more freedom, you'll have a better life. But is that reality? Let's start to break it down, Andy. Go on, I'll let you take the helm here.
So I'll go with the easy one first. For the employed engineer, we pay a little bit more than this in our heating in business, as I think you do as well, don't you, Wayne? But let's use 40 grand as a simple scenario. It gives them about $2.5 a month of walk away money. So your tax is already taken off you, your national insurance is already taken off you before the money lands in your bank account. So there's complexities that are removed. What lands in your bank account is your money, not part of it is not yours, but you fucking forget about it.
then that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that in a separate podcast. But yeah, there's no chasing money, no stress about where the next job's coming from. No.
Andy's camera's just gone. I'm just going to pause the recording while we just fix this technical delay. And we're back. Here he is.
Sorry about that.
The tech wizard, Andy Jones, has found the camera button.
Might have to replace that. You know, it's not at all a mind of its own. Anyway, so yeah, keeping it simple. You're going to walk away with 2.5 grand a month. You don't have to worry about your diary. Diary's going to be populated for you by, you know, the admin team or the business owner that you work for. You're not chasing the money. You finish work at the end of the day, and then you can switch off. For the most part, I know in the trade we often worry if we've, you know, done a great job or if we've left, you know, a fuse spur switched off or a test nipple out, whatever. But for the most part, you're switching off because it's not, you know, your own business. Direct comparison then, self-employed. Let's say, and this I would probably say is roughly average to a slightly above average, which is charging 250 quid a day. Yeah. You're working most days and most weeks. You're going to turn over around 60 grand, which that metric in itself is usually the most common metric. And we've had subcontractors work for us in the past who I've suggested they take on a PAYE role. And this has been that conversation. Oh, but you're only paying 40 odd grand, but I make 60 odd grand for myself. Yeah. And this is that turnover versus walk away kind of thing. But while it sounds better at face value, when you then strip it back, there's a lot of costs that, because they don't come off per job or per month or whatever it might be, like it would with a wage, it takes a little bit of an overview to see what you're stripping back. So the biggest one to me is almost always the van. The van's such a huge cost, and it becomes such a huge cost. And this is another statement that people can sort of be a bit triggered by, is the van. So most self-employed tradesmen will use the van as a personal vehicle as well. Now, flip that. Let's say you worked for British Gas, for example. The last I was aware, you're not allowed to use the van for personal use. But if you're on 40 odd grand a year, you're going to probably have a decent car. You know what I mean? If you had an office job and you're on 40 odd grand a year, you're going to be driving around in a nice car for the most part. So, you know, you're using the van. Okay, you're using it for personal use to save some costs, but you're still paying for the maintenance of that vehicle. So the purchase itself, the insurance, the fuel, general maintenance, so your tires and things like that. And then obviously tools, you know, analyzers are expensive. Just talking this morning, we've got another engineer starting. I've just ordered another one. Okay, it's a decent one, but it's still 1,200 quid. Then you've got to get it calibrated annually. So let's roll that in. Let's call it around about 15 grand a year for all that cost. So depreciation on the van. Fuel is a massive one nowadays. It's going up and up and up. Again, this is that comparison. If you were making 65 grand last year, the fuel prices have probably stripped that back already to 64, 63, 62, whatever that might be, depending on your mileage. Whereas the employed guy's wages have probably gone up. So with no bearing on that fuel, it's the business that suffers the cost of the fuel. Yeah. But yeah, strip that 15 grand back. Now he's at 45 grand. Then you've got tax. So he's probably walking away, again, just keeping those numbers really simple for the sake of the podcast, but let's say 3 grand a month. So he's up about 500 quid a month versus the employed role. Having said that, the extra work that comes with it, finding his own work, chasing payments, doing quotes and invoices at night. And the reality is you're going to be thinking about that job 24/7. You get home, you sit down, you don't switch off. You don't relax with the family. You don't relax with the kids. You're going to be thinking, oh shit, I didn't send that invoice. Oh shit, that job tomorrow is a right pain in the ass. I'm not really looking forward to that. So I suppose the question
we haven't even factored in like the phantom, what I call the phantom costs. So, you know, things
running
like
over a nail,
jobs cancelling. Obviously unexpected expenses, mistakes you might make, callbacks that happen. All of these, when you're self-employed, come straight out of your pocket in either time or money, don't they? So I think we're being generous with this estimation. Agreed. Here, to be honest.
Agreed. Yeah. So yeah, the question again really is that 500 quid a month really worth it for all the shit? I'll let you take over. I'll rest my voice. So this is the flip side to it now. Is
so what that example?
Portion. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I think we're getting a delay, mate. Sorry. So what we're getting there is, so we obviously gave the example of the employed person on 40K, and then we gave what we see. You know, we speak to a lot of people as like the average self-employed person. So let's flip it again. Let's look at sort of the higher, topper end lads in the industry that are sort of charging better, doing things a bit more properly, shall we say. So they're on average, they're charging or getting between 350 and 400 a day. They've got half decent customers, you know, that trust them and rely on them. And they've got some decent sort of systems and processes in the business. So they're doing circa 800 to 100K, which brings the take home sort of to about 5K a month. That's where you start to win at the self-employed level. But, you know, unfortunately, not everybody gets to that point, and they get stuck at that, in that sort of no man's land, don't they, between sort of being employed and sort of actually being a proper business, so to speak. And I would say it's hard to put a number on, but I would say most of the guys that come to Off the Tools generally are, when they first come, they're certainly, would you agree, they're certainly towards that sort of lower tier, aren't they? You know, and absolutely. Our aim is to bring them up, you know, and get them up to charging properly and starting to earn that sort of more decent money in the business.
It's but about then
obviously also.
Yeah, I'm saying I reckon about 80% of the industry is either that lower end or in between, because I've just coming to me head there, a big variable or a big curveball to it is VAT. So yes, obviously Wayne's mentioned those numbers there, sort of between 80 and 100, and what sits between 80 and 100, the VAT threshold. So again, most lads will be diving actively trying to keep under the VAT threshold, but then that causes its own share of problems. We've spoke about that on other podcasts and how trying to duck under it is costing you money year on year. So we're not going to delve into that. But the reality is, yeah, Wayne is absolutely spot on. Most lads are on the bottom end. And you know, anyone listening will know that they usually sit around that mark. They're probably doing 60 to 70K, but not because, and this is the problem. And I think it'll be highlighted with the Making Tax Digital stuff, because the problem when you don't see those costs immediately, and again, being self-employed, there's always a big, like, you don't compartmentalize your money as a business owner, especially if you're VAT registered and limited company, etc. There's a much more solid line between what's yours and what's owned by the business. When you're self-employed, sole trader style, and we've both been there, so we know, we can talk about this firsthand, is it's a blurry line. You're using the van for personal use, but you're filling the fuel up through the business card, and then it's like, well, actually, I'll just, you're buying yourself some lunch, and that goes on there as well. And then, it just gets very, very blurry of what's yours and what's the business's. So what happens with that then is, as they bring in, as you sort of suffer these costs from day to day, you get hyper focused on your turnover. But it's only then when you're at year end and you go, well, actually, I've only walked away with 40K, 50K, 45K, whatever it is. Whereas then that is in that dangerous territory then of, well, would me as an individual be better off employed? And that's what it comes down to, I suppose, isn't it, really? It's like, can you suffer the stress? Do you want to, are you happy doing it? And again, the percentage of the lads that actually pull it off is a lot smaller than maybe you realize, because my take on it's always been, if you work for yourself, you should either be able to work less hours and match your salary, or work more hours and get a shitload more than the salary. Which is why, again, we say, if you're not doing at least double what you would get in your salary, then is it really worth it? And again, this is such a triggering conversation, because again, the guys that are pro self-employed are very, very pro self-employed, aren't they? They're like, no, you don't want a fucking job. Fuck that. Fuck someone telling me what to do. You know, tell me when I can take my lunch and things like that. No chance. I'm not having that. And that's the reference previous podcast. That's the ego kicking in, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you take a zoom out of it and go, well, actually, what's better for your family, for you, for your mental health, for you know, your life in the future? Because pensions, the pension, we've not even touched on pension yet.
Yeah. You know, how I dread to think how many self-employed people have nothing behind them, you know. So when they get older, you know, it's scary, isn't it? Like, again, that could be a whole podcast episode on looking after the future, because again, if you factor in those costs into what most self-employed people are earning, it just gets smaller and smaller, doesn't it? That actual benefit for a lot of people. And I think the real
one on that, actually, we could do the next one.
Sorry, say that again.
Say we can do the next podcast on that. Actually, future planning.
I agree. I think the real question here is: are you set up properly for the path you're on? Because self-employed doesn't automatically mean better, does it? It just means it's all on you, ultimately, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I'll ask yourself that question: are you on the right path for what you're trying to build and do?
There's you know, we've not even either touched on the weight that you carry on your shoulders when you're self-employed. Again, the guys who are shouting about it, it's like there was a post the other day, and it was again a little bit heating industry focused, but it was, you know, okay, we're into the summer, work's gone quiet, any suggestions? And the amount of guys are like, well, yeah, just take the time off, enjoy the time off. So that's great in principle. You can't take 3 months off and do fuck all, because all that happens then is you're then trying to generate a year's worth of revenue through the autumn and the winter months, which isn't good again. But you know, you're out the house
so much more pressure, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're not seeing your kids and that. So whereas, you know, with the right mindset, you can obviously then pivot that, and we talk about this in the Alliance a lot, about manipulating diaries so that you're pulling last year's work out of the winter and bringing it into the summer. But to stay on topic, it's that weight that you burn on your shoulders. And another thing I've spotted on it, so, you know, me and you both do martial arts. So me and Wayne both did Muay Thai when we were a bit younger. I'm doing jiu-jitsu now. There's a lot of worry involved with things like that, of, well, what happens if I, you know, break an arm, break a leg, dislocate my shoulder, I'm not going to be able to work. You know, you lose the luxury of sick pay. Obviously, if you've got a private thing in place, then that's a little bit different. But again, I would argue most guys don't have a private health insurance in place that would cover them for something like that. So again, it's that back end pressure of, actually, I better not do that. I better not do that. I better not do that in case something happens to me. You know what I mean? I better not, you know, whatever it might be. Like that lingers at the back of the mind potentially, of, I better not do this thing because if this happens to me. And I was there myself when I was doing Muay Thai. There was always that risk of, well, if I break an arm in a fight, I'm not gonna be able to work. Shit, I better not get too deep into this. So there's a lot of pressure that you're carrying, especially if you're the breadwinner for the family, that you have to carry if you're self-employed, which you don't have to carry in the same way if you're employed.
Yeah. And you know, I feel that this is a very good time to be talking about this, because a lot of people will be sitting there struggling. Maybe they're listening and thinking, damn, that's me. You know, I'm not charging what I should be. I'm not taking home what I should be. And I think a lot of people stay stuck self-employed from an ego point of view. We're jumping back a couple of episodes to what we spoke about. I think some people see it as a failure to go back and become employed. And obviously our business, right, Off the Tools, is designed to help you build a business. So I know we're being quite negative here, but self-employment and running a business isn't for everybody. Yeah, it might look like it's easy, and it might look like you can have everything that we spoke about earlier, you know, more money, more time and that. But in reality, unless you start to become a businessman, unless you start to run a business, all you're doing is creating the worst job in the world, because most self-employed people are trapped. They're literally trapped. They've got their families on one side pulling on them. They've got their customers pulling on them, and they've got no infrastructure, no cash, no one to turn to as well. That's a huge part, and it's quite sad. And we wonder, I'm taking a real tangent here, but we wonder why we see so much depression and worse, like people do worse than just having a bit of depression, especially in the construction industry, and even more so in men generally. And we wonder why, but a lot of it comes down to being in the wrong place. And it's hard when you're in, if you've spent 10 years, 5 years trying to build self-employment, trying to grow, and especially with everything that's going on in the world at the minute, you're looking at the bank balance and you're like, damn, this just isn't working. So many men will try and suck that up on their own and try and work harder, do more, at the consequence to themselves, their physical health, their mental health, their families, or what's the word I'm looking for? Their families, family time, and it's, I just, if you're listening to this and we've hit a nerve, right? Don't see that as a negative, because self-employment is hard. It's been easy for far too long, and it's getting harder and harder.
Yeah.
So if you have to take what might be seen as a step back, but it's not a step back. If you can go and get a job and you can have secure money, you can have less stress, and you can start enjoying life, start waking up energized and happy to be alive, then do that. It only has to be short term, even if it's just a short term solution to shift the route that you're on. Don't be afraid to do it. Yeah. Do not care what Dave down the road says. Oh, look, fucking Jim's given up his business, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? They ain't paying your bills. They ain't helping you at night when you're stressed out and you're pulling out what hair you've got left on your head,
I just want to wade in a little bit on that.
Sorry.
And like,
that's right.
A bit very prevalent point is, again, because things are getting harder and the businesses that are doing things properly are not taking work from the lads who are self-employed, but naturally, customers are different now. They expect more, and the old, we've done loads of podcasts on this, but the old way of doing things is no longer enough. But what we've found happen, and again, a lot of the lads that come into the Alliance have done this, because they're generally making less money than they were previous year, because of fuel and inflation or stuff like that, but are also too scared to put the prices up. Often the easier way for lads to fix that is just to work more. Like, rather than putting the prices up, it becomes do more jobs. So then, like, this is a very prevalent point, because the lads who are then making, let's say that this lad's making 80 grand a year. And again, these are going to be the lads that are very passionate about, no, I'm way better off when I'm self-employed. Look how much more money I'm making. But when you strip that back and you make that direct comparison between employed working hours and the hours you're currently working, yes, you might be making 80 grand a year, twice as much as you'd get from a salary. But if you're working twice as many hours, it's not a direct comparison. You cannot compare it. If you're working 8 in the morning and smashing out, I want to get this system conversion done in a day, so I'm doing 8 till 8, and then you work in the Saturday, and then you look at your turnover at the end of the year and go, well, I did 80, 90, 100 grand or whatever it is at the end of the year. That's fantastic, and it's a great work ethic, but you cannot compare that to being employed. It isn't the same hours. You don't finish
and
at
you
5
can't
o'clock.
sustain that as well. What happens when you break that leg, or you get ill, or it's not a long term. We can all hustle, we can all get in the trenches and get to work. That's innate to us. But it's not a long term strategy. So let's flip this into a more positive, because there is a way through that. We've this year so far. This is episode 30, I think, roughly 29 or 30. I can't remember exactly. Just go back and listen to everything we've been saying in these most recent episodes. Go back to the old archived stuff as well. You know, there are ways, there are pathways through this, but for the most people, they're not going to see it. They're not going to hear it. They're not going to take the lessons that we have had personally and the lessons that we've learned from the guys that we work with. But trust me, there is a route through it when you actually start to build a business. I guess ultimately that is the big thing, isn't it? You've got to start building a business, not just building that job that traps you, haven't you?
Yeah, it's just, you know, we've said this million times, but it's no longer enough to just be passionate, be a good tradesman, to be, you know, friendly with your customers, and just, you know, it's still mentioned on the forum so much that especially from the old school guys, do a good job, charge fairly, and you'll build a business. That's no longer true. I'm sorry if you don't like that, hearing that. It's just no longer true. And you can argue with us till you're blue in the face if you want. It isn't enough anymore. And it's not through your fault. And it's not really through the fault of the trade that you're in. It's customers. The world, the landscape has changed. And we talk about this constantly. The landscape has changed, and customers now demand more than just that. It's not enough. If you go,
it's a different game out there now. The rules have changed, haven't they?
Yeah. You've got to be able, for a start, you're battling, like, the word of mouth thing isn't the local, you know, having a chat in the local boozer. It's a Google search. So if you're just a local guy with a stickered van, but you're not doing any marketing and you've not got reviews, it's not going to work for you. That's just the reality of it. So you need to, like, you know, you've just explained it very, very well. If you're going to be successful now as someone who's going self-employed, you have to move, you have to be living in the now, you have to be in the modern times. You know, like you said before, you've got the lads that are coming into the Alliance. Fortunately for them, they've caught it at this time where they've, you know, the early stages of, oh, I'm not doing quite as well as I was last year. Why is that? They come in, they maybe not using a job management software, they're not doing any marketing, they've not got any reviews. By bringing your business into what is required and what's demanded from customers into now, you can thrive. You can be in that section that we spoke about, that top 20%, 10 to 20% that thrive, and they will be way, way better than self-employed. The employed, sorry, they're going to be making, you know, lads in the Alliance are making more money, working less hours, which is arguably that's the goal, isn't it? Like, you want to be working, you know, and it doesn't have to be about, you know, we use the word business, and that, I think that can be very triggering for a lot of guys as well. I don't want a business. I have no interest in building a business. And again, I'll say the same thing. Like, it's tough shit in a way. You have to build some form of business, even if it is just you. It has to be structured and ran like a business. Otherwise, you're gonna lose to the guys that are doing it like a business.
Yeah. You know, I can't echo that enough. It's so important that I think the first stage of this is highlighting it, isn't it? You know, and it's a hard pill to swallow when you look and you're like, this isn't working. No one likes to admit defeat, you know, and it's not defeat. All it is a blow, you know, and it's how you react to that blow, and then what you do next. Ultimately, action changes things, doesn't it? So, you know, if you're one of those lads that are sitting there thinking, do you know what, that sounds like me, then what can you do? What can you do to shift it? The fact that you're listening or watching to this is a huge step. You know, hopefully some of what we've just spoke about for the last half an hour has resonated and maybe shifted your perception about what your current situation is, because you have to understand that. You have to know where you are right now. What does your bank balance look like? I call it getting naked in front of the mirror. You know, no one likes to do that, but well, not everybody likes to do that. Some people do. But that in a business, in self-employment or in a business, getting naked in front of that mirror is looking at the numbers, looking at what money is left and what money is yours, and where your current position is. And if it's not pretty, then guess what? It's your fault. Yeah, ultimately, you've got to shoulder that responsibility. That's not me being a dickhead. That's just reality. You know, if you're fat, it's because you've made some wrong decisions. You know, if you've got no money, you've made some wrong decisions. And when you accept everything as, I think it's a Stoic philosophy, isn't it? Basically, you know, the buck stops with you. You can make all the different excuses. I haven't got my no excuses hat here. You know, excuses are just a dummy for an adult, aren't they? You know, it's just put your dummy in and shut up in the corner. Well, that ain't going to solve the problem. So first stage, identify that there is a problem. Great. Okay. Anyone listening, if that is you, brilliant. That is stage one. Stage two is finding now the solutions to get you out of that. And it's not quick. It's not easy. It's probably going to cost a little bit of money one way or the other, whatever course you go, path you go down, but you're going to have to take that first step. You're going to have to take that first step and start making the changes. And like I said, the previous episode talk about everything that we see and feel is what you need to build a business in 2026 and beyond. And once you get on that journey, you quickly start to realize how out of sync your old mindset was. You start to see things in a completely different light. You start to understand the decisions you're making, and ultimately, one step at a time. And before you know it, you turn around and you're half a mile down the road. You're on your way. And like I said, it's not quick. You know, anyone that any person that you see or tells you that it's quick and easy is lying or haven't done it. You know, so don't expect an easy ride, but there is a pathway. We are here to help. You know, we do these podcasts because we love to help people. So you can just consume these. These are all free of charge. You know, there's no cost to any of this. Obviously, if you want to take it to the next level, you can reach out, jump onto the website and see what Off the Tools is all about. I want as many of you guys that are listening to take that first step. We don't tie you into contracts. We don't make it a 12-month deal or anything like that. We're very much, if we don't provide value, you shouldn't be paying us, you know. So there's no contract. You can come in, test it out, see what it's like to be in an environment that challenges you, that pushes what your current view of the world is. And trust me, you know, not many people leave unsatisfied. You know, it is a really powerful environment to be on. And just a quick note, just while I'm on my tangent here, we actually have a completely free Q&A session that is coming up. Do you know the date off the top of your head, Andy? I want to say Tuesday the 16th of June, isn't it? 7 p.m. You're not going to be on camera, so there's no pressure. You know, you can just watch, put in your question. You know, you can type it in. Is it the 16th? Yeah.
Yeah. You can be anonymous if you choose. If you are employed and you're thinking about going self-employed, you can be in. You can just have a username. You can have questions, and if you want to ask questions about being self-employed, then go for it. And I think just
put the link in to register, just like around somewhere around the post. It will there'll be a link to register for that.
Just to reference the getting naked in front of the mirror thing.
I'm not doing it again with you, Andy. Okay, I've told you about that. That was one time, right?
Twice. So, like, and again, I seem to be making a habit of triggering statements on this particular podcast. But if your business or your bank balance is not quite where it wants to be, part of that is your own fault, even if it's happened without you doing anything different, if that makes sense, because that is the problem. Again, the forums, there's a lot of, shit's gone quiet. Boxed is taking all the work. Customers are getting cheap. Cost of living's having an effect. People aren't getting stuff done. Like, you know, and there's lads saying, just accept that summer is quiet, or, you know, you need to make a pivot and go and do aircon or heat pumps. The work is still there. It's just, again, it's getting taken by the people doing it properly. And the failing and where you're not where you want to be is because you haven't moved with the times. And that's the fundamental problem with self-employment and the phrase that we so often like to use of being an accidental business owner. And if you don't think like a business, you can't just think like a tradesman anymore. It just won't fucking work. And I'm not saying that to be a dick. I'm saying that to help as many people who are listening to this. You have to think like a business owner, or you're going to lose to the people that do.
Yeah.
You just that's it. And that's like, you know, the lads that come into the alliance have been previously thinking like a tradesman, and then they start to think like a business owner. They come into the alliance and go, shit, yeah, that makes sense. And then they start to really dominate in their area.
Yeah. And when we're talking about building a business, we're not trying to build people into the next Amazon or HomeServe or things like that. You know, it doesn't need to be a huge operation. It just needs to be a smooth operation. Yeah, that's a song in it. No, smooth. What's the song? Operator. I was close. So don't think we're sitting here trying to make you all the next billionaires, because quite frankly, it's very unlikely that will happen. But what we want to do is help you build something that secures you and your family's future and provides value to the outside world, and obviously brings value to yourself. So on that note, I think I'm done. Have you got any closing words, Andy, or should we wrap up for the day?
Yeah, just a few notes that I've made here is, you know, try and figure out what you genuinely want internally. Like you said before, forget about what the next guy thinks, forget about this thought process or this mindset of failure. You know, my lead engineer did a brief stint of being self-employed and he hated it. He is a phenomenal employee. He will be in a much higher position as time goes on. He's fantastic as an employee. He's brilliant. He does the training of the new lads, and he was not built to be self-employed, but he's an amazing employee. And that's a great example. Fortunately for him, he did it for a more brief period of time and didn't then become trapped and feel like he has to stay doing that. So I suppose essentially it's figure out, or, you know what game you're actually playing. Don't follow the crowd, because the loudest people on the forums are the ones that, as I said before, are pro be employed. Realize the trade-offs, realize whether you want to be self-employed, fully self-employed, or employed, or again, you know, potentially toe that line in between, which is the majority, is the majority share of the game, which is being a subcontractor. Which we'll can talk about in another one, because that's to me carries more pros and cons. It's there, but accept that some lads who are employed are happy than the self-employed ones. But if you're not making more money, if your bank balance and your customer base is dropping year on year when you're self-employed, all that's going to happen is you're going to fill that gap with more stress and potentially trying to work more hours to fill the void. You have a decision to make then, and we're in these dangerous times of you need to either decide if you want to really go for this, and, you know, like the lads in the Alliance have, where they've really upped their game and they've now, as I said before, the leading company in their area and they're dominating their area, or accept that, shit, this isn't for me. I don't want the stress. I want to switch off at the end of the day and consider going employed. And especially if you're a good engineer as well, it's actually gone the other way now. So previously, you know, like you said before, it's been quite easy to be self-employed. Previously, it was the really good engineers and the really good tradesmen that would dominate in their area because of the word of mouth and things like that. Use him, he's a fantastic engineer or a fantastic tradesman or spark or whatever it is. Whereas now it's the other way around. It's the businesses doing things properly that are beating the really good tradesmen. To flip the script on that, if you're a very, very good tradesman, you will be highly valued in an employed position. And that's something not a lot of guys think about. Like, if you don't think like a business owner and you think like a tradesman and you want to be, and you are a really good tradesman, the landscape has changed to a way where you'll be really, really valued in a business as an employee and probably rise to the top of the ranks, be the top engineer or top electrician or whatever it is in that particular business, and get to a point where you're probably the top earner, potentially the training the other guys and things like that. So it's a different mindset, isn't it? It's a different angle of looking at things, that it is not the be all and end all. But if you are going to do it fucking properly, or you're going to lose.
Yeah. On that note, we will say goodbye. Yeah, that's it, lads. God bless. Bye bye.